Let's get the show on the road. I think that's better. Okay, hello everyone. Hope you're well. Welcome to another class session. I have students from different classes of mine. Today is really meant to be towards a general audience, so we will see how that goes. As I mentioned, I'd really appreciate it if you had your cameras on. We'll keep this very informal. The goal is to have a talk, have communication, interact, and try to actually figure out what we can do to help everyone do better, help everyone improve. So that being said, let me kind of share the agenda here. Okay. So yeah. Welcome to the inaugural study hall. I don't know. That's just a joke. I don't know if I'm going to do this all the time. It's actually the first time I've kind of been doing this. This is like a super open office hour where people from all walks of life come in. There are actually more people here than said they would be here, so I'm happy to see that. I know a lot of people are not able to make it during this time because they have classes or whatever, or work or going on. So this is being recorded. I will be saving the notes and I will have you guys have access to the video. That being said, like I said, I haven't really done anything like this before. It's never been this structured. So I really don't know how it's going to turn out. But for the most part, I suppose it's going to go something like this. So I'm going to be doing a lot of talking, a lot of lecturing for the first part. That first part might last half an hour, 40 minutes or so. While I'm doing maybe an hour, I don't know. Like I said, I don't know what's going to come to me when I'm doing it. But also, if during that time when I'm talking, if something comes up, something comes to mind, then feel free to interrupt me. And if it's not too long, I'll discuss it. If not, I'll refer it to the later part, where you guys come in, and I hope you guys can share some of your experiences, maybe share some of your struggles. I can kind of try to help you guys with it in real time, and it would probably also do a lot to help others as well who have similar struggles. You're all students, you're all math students. Trust me, you guys all have similar struggles. You're all in a crazy time, classes being online, a pandemic going on, and you're all trying to get better at a technical subject or multiple technical subjects. I promise you there will be a lot of overlap in the issues that you guys are having. So feel free to share and talk and really keep it casual. I mean, be kind to everyone. Just notice we're all here because we want to do better. We want to improve. Even me, I want to improve. I want to know how I can reach you guys better, how I can help you guys with where you are to get where you want to go. So just be very open and just understand no one's here to judge you or make you feel bad, and I don't want any of you to do that to each other. So this is really to help everyone involved here. Okay. That being said, yeah, like I said, this is study hall, and the goal is to help you become a better student, improve your standing in this, and maybe even your other classes. A lot of things I'm going to talk about are general principles that will help you in your other classes and other difficult endeavors as well, and hopefully get the kind of grade you want. And yes, as I mentioned, here's geared towards a general audience. So that's like the little intro here. Okay, so I'll be making that. And of course, what follows are some rushed bullet points of what I want to talk about. So it's a crazy week for me, and half of me was hoping that most people would want this session to be next week. But I do know that it's actually more important to do it sooner rather than later. And so I kind of found time to do it today. And if today is when a lot of people can do it, I think it's actually better to do it today than next week. So I didn't get to, again, plan this ahead a lot. I just rushed through some bullet points just now. And I even quickly looked back at even some old videos that I have, which is what this ads is about, to remind me to talk about that. So every now and then I give advice in my classes. They were sprinkled all over. So I was kind of like checking to see if is there anything that I'm forgetting to type, and I would look back at some old videos. And there's something that I noticed that was actually brought up earlier. So we haven't started the session yet, but this is just something I think is important to mention, is that my YouTube videos, some of them have like ads running in the middle of the video, which I think are could be very distracting to some people. And so I recently, and by recently, I mean a couple months ago, changed the settings so that the ads don't play during my video. They might play before or after, I don't know. It depends on what's going on. But I realized that that change wasn't retroactive. Like if my previous videos had that setting, it didn't actually change that setting. So just so if you guys notice anything like that, like you're watching an old recorded video of mine and there are like a bunch of ads in the middle, like I don't want to break up the learning experience and distract anybody. So just like identify to me if you come across anything like that, and I'll fix the settings, because it's supposed to be working that way every video I've been doing since the summer onwards, but videos that were recorded before might still have issues. So just point those out to me and I will get on it. Okay, now let's actually get into the crux of everything. Now, a lot of this, it's going to be two parts. A lot of it is going to be conceptual, behavioral, psychological, and then there are going to be some practical steps. And again, in the beginning, it's going to be very general to be able to help anyone. I will get more specific with examples or experiences that I've had with myself, with students, or I will wait for you guys to come up with a particular scenario that we can work through with the principles that I'll be talking about here. However, while I'm going through this and while you're just going through daily life, I think there are some things you do want to keep in mind. Right? So I don't know if you can see this. Maybe I can make this a little bigger. Right? So these are things to kind of always keep in mind. The first thing is you can improve, okay? Your current status is not your destiny, right? Your mindset is actually important. The belief that you can do better is actually an important belief. And that is very, very important for you to know. A lot of people would think of themselves as a certain way, like I'm just not a math person, and you know it's just my life that I will always struggle in math classes and blah blah blah, right? And so they sort of tell themselves this, and that is, you done messed up if you're already there, right? Now there might be reasons. Don't get me wrong. There might be reasons why you believe this. And that's something we'd have to work on. And I'll talk about something like that. But having that mindset in the first place is going to make things very difficult for several very important reasons. So it's also, by the way, because a lot of times people take years to build up to this mindset. And it also is a story that they keep telling themselves over years. And so a lot of it's not something that I'm going to be able to fix or undo in this session. But just so you know, if you have this mindset, it is actually very important that you start looking into ways to challenge that mindset. You want to have a growth mindset, believe in yourself to improve, believe in yourself to get better. And I'm not going to sell you any fancy dreams or anything like that. I'm going to be very realistic, very down to earth. And so I'm not going to promise that, oh, you do what I say and you're going to be the biggest math genius in the whole world. You're going to be better than Einstein, because realistically, it's not true for most people that they're going to be as good as Einstein or as smart as Gauss or one of these brilliant people that we know about from history. But the good news is you don't have to be to get an A in a math class. You just don't. Like, you don't have to be Einstein or Gauss or the best thing ever to get an A in pre-calc or calc 1 or calc 2. You don't even have to be a tenth of what that is, right? So a lot of people build something up in their mind. They build up who they think they are. They also build up what it means to achieve what they want to achieve. And they just think, I have to be this amazing thing to achieve that thing, and I'm not, right? And they stop themselves in their tracks before anything even starts. And that is not, that's not good. So I think this somehow feels a little dark in here. So that's the first thing. Oh, wow. If this is any indication, this is just stuff I want to keep in the back of your mind. If I'm elaborating that much on these things, oh boy, how are we going to get through this? Okay, let me kind of speed it up. When it comes to assessing yourself, the next thing to keep in mind, you and what you can do must be the measuring stick. You can never judge yourself by someone else. You can never say, well, this person learned this topic in 15 minutes. It took me 2 hours to learn it. They are better than I am. And, therefore I need to improve or something like that. Or you can't watch a YouTube video on some math topic and be like, oh yeah, what this guy says makes a lot of sense. So I must understand. Well, no, you just watched someone else talk about a concept that didn't come out of your own head. You are the measuring stick. You will never be able to fully assess whether or not you understand the concept unless it came out of your own head. The fact that you can listen to someone else and understand what they're saying does not mean that you understand. You must be used to measure you. That's very important. Okay, that's one of the biggest issues ever, and we're going to actually expand on that. Another thing, not everything is easy. A lot of people think that, okay, just do these things and I'll get that A, or there's secret tricks, or let me do these steps. Not everything is easy. Different things will be difficult for different people. That is okay, and it is fine. Some things will be easy for you. Some things will be hard for you. Some of the advice that I give you to apply will be easy for you to apply. Some will be difficult for you to apply. It depends on you as a person. You just need to be aware that just because something is difficult does not mean that it's not meant for you. So you might be someone for whom to actually improve and get an A in a math class, it's difficult. It doesn't mean you don't deserve an A in a math class. It doesn't mean you can't get an A in a math class. Some things are hard in life. Some things are easy. It's a fact of life. Accept it. Deal with it. Right? Just don't use that as a reason to judge who you are or what you can accomplish. So that's very important. Okay. Awareness and specificity are important. I'm going to talk about those a lot more in detail as well, because I do think one of my main concerns, as you'll see later on, is just a lack of awareness that I'm seeing the typical student exhibit, and it's shown to me in various ways, but it's detrimental in all its forms, and I'll actually talk about that moving forward. Just also so you know, sometimes I'm going to get very detailed. I literally typed out an agenda for this, so that already kind of tells you where it's going. I did rush and type this out off the top of my head, but I did try to be fairly thorough. That being said, I don't want you to get stressed out over the details and think of this as, oh my God, this is like a whole other class now where I have to know stuff and do stuff. Don't really think about it that way. Sometimes you might not even have to apply everything that I say, but if you apply some of them that I say, that you will automatically do better. Sometimes there are going to be easy fixes. Sometimes there won't be. Don't get fixated on the wrong thing. Oh man, this is just too much. I shouldn't even start. So just take that with a grain of salt. Try to get the overall message, the overall idea, the overall principles that I'm trying to get, and try to apply them in your life a little bit more, right? Where else? Right. I also have another comment there, as I can see here. So there are times when I'm going to be saying stuff, which I'm a math tutor. I'm a math teacher and a tutor, and so I'm used to this criticism. But people always think that myself or other math teachers make things more complicated than there have to be, which is actually the farthest from the truth, believe it or not. Math is literally as simple as it needs to be. Like there's no math person who's like, yeah, I can solve this problem, but I want a harder way to solve it. It never happens, right? So that being said, I know that there are going to be times when I'm going to say things here and it's going to seem to you to be overly complicated. You're going to feel like, well, my friend is good at math and he doesn't do any of these things that Jhevon is talking about. And I just want you to be aware, again, the extent to which you have to apply the things that I'm saying vary from person to person. And also, it's very often that the people who do well automatically kind of apply things that I'm talking about without the rigid structure that I'm going to be recommending for some of you. And that's just because that's whatever they're doing, they just happen to be naturally good at that thing, or more naturally better at that thing than you or something. And which is fine. You're going to be naturally better at some things than other people. This is human variation. Okay, so that's another thing to keep in mind. The sixth thing I want to keep in mind. Now, the sixth and the seventh, these are, I wasn't sure if I even wanted to put these guys in. They can be controversial. They can also be very bad if you apply them correctly. But nonetheless, I think they're very important tools, and they can be a massive help in a positive way in your lives. So I decided to just take the risk and do it here. And if anything is not clear, you guys can hopefully bring that up. But the sixth thing I want to say is narratives are important. The stories that you tell yourself, the kind of person that you believe you are, and all that stuff. The story is more important in a lot of ways. Stories are more important than facts. And I know it's crazy. I'm saying that as a math person, but it's true. Have you ever tried to argue with a lot of people based on facts, right? There are people where you can give them all the statistics and all the science and all the reasons, and they still won't believe what you say. A lot of times, it's not because they're not intelligent. It's not because they're trying to be, difficult. But a lot of times it's just because they literally told themselves a story about how the world works, why it works, and what you're saying does not match that story. And they have reasons for believing the story that they've believed because they've seen something or they've experienced something, whether good or bad. And so they just believe the world works this way. This is the story of reality. And so when someone comes with something that doesn't agree with that story, it's not accepted. And so at the end of the day, it turns out, and it's going to sound very weird for me to say this, but you want to start thinking of your life as a story. You're going to want to think of your life as a narrative and who you want to be in that narrative. And a lot of times you're going to have to fake it till you make it, leading into the next point. Meaning there are going to be times when you're going to be in a situation and you're going to have to make a decision like, what should I do? Do I push harder? Do I quit? Do I give up? And at the end of the day, how you're going to make those decisions is whether or not it fits in with the story. So for example, if you are someone who is want to run a marathon or something like that, right? So you can just say, okay, in my story, I am now a runner. That's who I am. I'm the person who runs marathons. I don't give up when it's tough. That's the story I tell myself. As opposed to if you tell yourself the story, well, I'm just going to run this marathon because my friends are doing it. Seems cool. It's just something that, that's the story of my life. My life is not about running. It's more about, this is a hobby. It's something to do. Because what happens is when you get into the marathon and you're running the marathon and it starts to get tough, there's going to come a point where you're going to have that conversation with yourself where you're going to be like, why am I doing this to myself? Do I keep running? Do I keep going? Do I pull back? And the thing is, if in this story you are the runner that overcomes the challenges, it is consistent with your belief to push forward, as opposed to if you believe in your story, you're just some guy who's doing this as a hobby, there's no reason for him to push for anything. Yeah, you can just give up. It's going to be easier for you to give up or push based on the story that you're telling yourself, based on how you look at yourself, based on your current mindset, all of that. It's actually pretty important. A lot of things stem from mindset and the narratives that we feed ourselves and the emotions that we go through. And a lot of times you fake it till you make it. Sometimes you're sitting around watching, just binge watching Netflix. Every now and then you should have the thought, I want to get an A in math class. Would someone who wants to get an A in math class currently be doing what I'm doing? And if you realize that the answer is no, you should probably just fake it till you make it. What would someone who is doing an A in a math class, what would they be doing right now instead of binge watching Netflix? Probably at the very least, they'll be watching a math video or they'll be trying to do some homework. So you know what? I'm really not interested in any of that, but I'm just going to do it anyway. Fake it till I make it. Eventually, if I do all the actions that an A student does, I'll probably end up as an A student, which I'll probably say more about that later on. Now, also, application is important. It's actually more important than knowledge, right? If you know all the things, the right things to do, but you never actually try to apply them, it doesn't help. And we're going to go into that more into that later on as well. Some of the things that I'm realizing is that students either don't apply things that they know they should apply, or um, they think they're applying something when they're not, right? And that's a big issue. That also goes back to the awareness issue that I mentioned earlier, why awareness is important. Because there are going to be times when you think you're doing the right thing. You think you're faking it till you make it, that you're the star of your own narrative, that you're you're on the right path, when you're actually not. And it's because you're not really paying attention to the right things. And I want to go into that as well. So wow, that's not even, it's not even any of the meat of the things I want to talk about, but I think it was very important to actually address those things right off the bat. The mindset and your concern, the environment, how you look at the world, how you interpret things, how aware you are, it influences everything. And at the end of the day, you need to apply the knowledge that you get. You don't want to be a self-help junkie, reading all these articles about how to be better, how to get good at math, and you never actually do anything about it, because all you'll be doing is knowing all the right things to do and not doing them. You are not going to get better at the end of the day. Okay, so those are just some things to keep in mind. That was supposed to be a 5-minute segment. I'm very too much long-winded here. Let's actually keep going. So some main concerns that I have. There are some things that as a math teacher, I find particularly disappointing, right? Students have struggles with math. Not everyone gets A's in math. That's just par for the course. I don't think that's necessarily how reality has to be. I do have the belief that everyone can get an A in a math class if things fall into place. But what is particularly distressing to me is when students come to me and they tell me they've actually been putting in the work. They're actually studying. They're doing all the homework. I'm doing everything that I know how to do, and I'm still doing bad in the class. I don't understand why this is happening. And you know, it's frustrating. It makes them desperate. It makes them blame things that they shouldn't be blaming, right? And it doesn't help anyone because it's a frustrating thing all around, and it doesn't work. Another thing that's very concerning to me lately is just student awareness. And as I mentioned, I've been teaching for over a decade, believe it or not. And over that time, yeah, things have been slowly degrading over the years. And a part of it is due to technology and all that, it's a big thing I'm not going to get into. But really, I'm thinking like 5 years ago, certain things started really going off the cliff, like really falling off. And I find that it's correlated a lot with student awareness and things of that nature. And it's not something that I'm making up in my head. I know a lot of people are like that, but you know, I'm all about the scientific mindset and being a math person and actually tracking something. I don't actually use my emotions to judge anything. I have reasons to know. I have data to support the fact that student awareness is going off a cliff. From the proportion of emails that I get now from students asking questions when it's already addressed in the syllabus, it's already something I said in video, online, already something I've addressed in class multiple times. The proportion of emails where people keep asking questions that I have given them the answer in multiple ways and multiple times, that has increased for sure, right? Measurably, statistically, it has increased. I've also ran experiments in classes. So a couple years ago, I ran an experiment where on the first, I gave quizzes, and what I did was I put the same problem one on every quiz I gave that semester, or on most of the quizzes I gave. And my quizzes were fill in the blanks, and it was some short things. So it was things like, complete the formulas, and I might have, okay, a squared minus b squared equals blank, and the students had to fill in the formula. So, right, so they would fill in a minus b times a plus b, right? So things like that. So problem one was like four problems like this, easy formulas, right? So it was a pre-calc class, I think, a while back, right? And what I did was, and I know you guys don't know the structure, but back then, my quizzes were on paper. Every time I gave a quiz, I would write down the answers, I'd scan it, I'd post it online, everyone would know the answers, right? So in fact, the experiment, we are in a situation where even if you don't understand any of the rules, even if we don't know about the difference of squares, what it means or anything like that, eventually, because you've seen this answer so often, you're going to know what the answer is. Because I gave them the answers, right? So every week I gave this quiz. Every week it's the exact problem one. Every week I write the answers. Every week I scan it and post it. Every week I hand their quizzes back with X in problem one. Okay, you got problem one incorrect. The next week it comes around, give the same quiz, same problem one. Didn't even rearrange anything, didn't change any variables. I changed nothing in problem one. People get it wrong again. I write the answers, I post it online, I hand their quizzes back to them with an X in problem one. Make sure you see the answer to that. This happened 6, 7, 8 times in a row. And it's not something where they had to calculate. It's just was some rules that they should just know by heart, right? So it's not something that was, it's hard to figure out. But what I realized is that people just were not being aware. And I brought it up in class, and to my surprise, there were students in the class who did not even realize that problem one was the same among all these quizzes. Like, they show up every week, they do this quiz, and they didn't even notice it, that it's always the same thing. Okay, so these are, right, so there are a lot of reasons why I know awareness is a big deal, and I'm going to talk about why it's a big deal and how to fix it later on as well. Right. The other thing is students just making decisions out of desperation. They got a few bad grades on a quizzes or a test, and they just decide, you know what, I'm going to give up. I'm not meant for this. But really, they're making this decision out of fear or desperation or frustration, as opposed to logical reasons. There are very good logical reasons for choosing to drop a class. There are. But usually, when students drop a class, it's not for any of those reasons. It's for some sort of reason that they tell themselves that's not actually true, and that they could overcome if they actually just pretty much did the kind of things that I'm going to be talking about. So these things are particularly concerning to me lately. Students really working hard and not getting their results. I don't like to see that happening. It's one thing if you're not studying and you're not even trying and you're getting a bad grade. At that point, it's like, okay, you deserve it. But when some people are like actually putting in the effort and not getting the results, it really distresses me. It makes me sad. I don't like seeing it. I don't like when it happens to me, and I don't want it to happen to any of my students. Students just not being aware of things they should be aware of. That is responsible for so much trouble, and I do want to actually talk about that as well as students just making decisions for the wrong reasons. They're making decisions based on their emotional state, how frustrated they are, the fact that they got grades in the past, and then they think that those grades define them, and they think of themselves as failures if they get Fs. And so now they just repeat the cycle, and they make decisions because in the back of their mind, they made the decision as if they're a failure. And so what would a failure do? Of course, the failure would give up. If you're thinking of yourself as a failure in the back of your mind, you're going to make those decisions. And it turns out it's not even true, right? It's not even true. And they're making decisions based on this. So I don't like that. These have been particularly distressing to me. And a part of this is to address concerns like this, as well as just to get everyone on better footing. Okay, so how can this happen is something that you might want you might ask. You might not even ask this, but you might not even know to ask it, right? So you might think if someone is putting in the work, then they should be getting an A, which on the surface of it, I would agree with you, right? And it doesn't always happen though. And I've been seeing this in office hours. I've been seeing this over the years when I've been tutoring, when I've been teaching, when I've been talking to students, where they believe that because they were doing these activities, they should have gotten a better grade. And so the fact that they didn't get a good grade means that, oh, something is wrong with Jhevon, or something's wrong with the class, or the tests are too hard, or some other thing is going on, or maybe I'm just not a math person and I'm a failure, or maybe blah, blah. They come up with some other reason. And I totally get it, because they're like, I'm doing all the homework. I study 10 hours a week. I do this, I do blah. My friends hardly study and they're doing better. And so they don't understand that you can actually be in this situation. And so they misjudge what it means for them to be in this situation. And so that leads to a whole host of things going wrong. So I can give you some examples here just to illustrate some stories. So maybe it might help some of you if it's very similar to you. I've had students where they would go, I would tell them, okay, you should go to tutoring and you would need tutoring, right? So they would go to tutoring and they would come back and they'd be like, okay, yeah, you know, Jhevon, I went to tutoring 3 hours last week. Everything is, everything is great. And then I would ask them a question on the so I would ask them, you know, what did you go to tutoring and do? And they'll tell me the topic. And I'll ask just a simple, basic question about that topic. And they wouldn't be able to answer it, right? Like basic, like if you know anything about this topic, you would be able to answer this. It's a basic definition, and they wouldn't be able to answer. And then I would ask them another question they wouldn't be able to answer. I would give them a challenging question. I would give them an example. How do you do this example? And they wouldn't be able to answer it. And so now it's like, now they feel defeated. They're like, but I put in all those hours in tutoring. I should have gotten better. I felt like I was better. Like now when you're asking me these questions and I can't understand them, I don't know, like, did I waste my time in tutoring? Right? Something like that happens all the time. I would also see students doing things like, but I do all the homework. When I'm in class, I understand everything and I go home and I practice. And, you know, I'm just not, whenever I see a quiz, I guess maybe it's test anxiety. Maybe I'm just not good with tests. Like they're going to reach for something because it doesn't make sense, but it happens. And I've also had people who are like, they would be in my math class and I'll ask them about what else they're doing. And they would tell me some other classes they're taking and things of that sort. And as I ask, how are you doing in those classes? And they'd be like, oh, I'm actually doing pretty well. I'm like a B or higher right now. And I'm like, really? Because I know for a fact, objectively, that class is harder than my class, and they're barely pulling off a D in my class. And I'm like, what? How are you doing so well in that class? And they're like, that's what I don't understand, because I do homeworks for both classes, and yet somehow your class is the class that I don't know how to get. And this class was actually harder. And you know, I would notice things like if I probe them with questions more and start actually finding out what's going on, you'll see a lot of differences start to arise. And that's where the awareness comes in. They're not aware that they're actually not doing the same thing. They're actually not doing what they should be doing. So they go to tutoring and they think that's enough, but they don't really understand what happens during tutoring and why it would or would not work. They never really assess properly. They're not really aware of these things. And so to think of an example that I had had in mind, I can talk about the student that they were doing a lot of other hard classes and doing better in those classes. And so I asked, okay, so what? How do you practice for this other class? Just like for your class, I do my homework and you know, I do all the practice and I study for this many hours a day. Okay, so how is studying? What do you think about the class? And they'd be like, you know, I really enjoy the class. It's like the class is like a puzzle, you know, and it's like you know, I enjoy trying to figure things out and tinker with things, and it's really interesting. It's hard, but I happen to like it. I jive very well with this class, and I like it, and I try to figure things out on my own. I'm like, okay, all right, so let's get back to my class because you're in my class. Let me help you do better in there. So tell me about when you're doing homework with my class, how things go, how do your study sessions go? And they're like, well, I do it online, and okay, and you're getting a good homework grade. Yeah, I get through all the problems. And I'm like, okay, so when you're doing the problems, how does it feel? How do you actually do it? Well, sometimes I realize I'm doing the problems and I might forget a formula or something. So, I have to look up in the textbook or something, or, I have to click that option that says, read about this topic that's in WebAssign. And they'd go to the textbook and they'd read it and then they'd get it. Or, they might try to watch my YouTube video, go back through their notes and blah, 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 right? And so eventually they'll kind of struggle through my homework. They'll get through it. And right there, I had to point out the contrast. You see, in the other class that's actually harder, why you're doing better is that you're tinkering it with yourself, right? As opposed to in my class, you're just kind of doing the homework to get through it, and you're actually using resources external to yourself. So the thing is, when I started going into details about it and pointing out the areas in which they were actually not doing as much in my class as they thought, sure, they sat down for an hour, but that hour was spent in a very different way than they would initially think, because they just weren't paying attention. They just think like, oh, getting through the homework is all that matters. Well, no, it's not that all that matters. And so that's how this kind of misunderstanding actually occurs. So I also had students where I would make suggestions like, okay, create a formula sheet, write down the strategies, write down processes for doing problems that I tell you about in class. And the students will come to, oh, professor, I did what you said. I wrote down my formula sheets. I did all this stuff and I still did bad on the quiz today. And I'm like, really? You did the formula sheet? And they're like, yeah. And they'll show me the formula sheet and very neatly written out and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, yeah, you did do it out. And then I'll take the formula sheet from them and I'll have them sit over there. Okay. And I pick some random thing on the formula sheet and I'll say, okay, tell me about this. And they wouldn't be able to tell me. So the problem is they thought them doing the formula sheet was the point. And it's like, yes, you put in the time and effort to do the formula sheet. However, the point is not to create the formula sheet. The point is to create something that helps you get the knowledge in your brain. If it's not in your brain, it's not going to help you. It's on your formula sheet because you're not allowed to use that formula sheet in the test. So if all your knowledge is on this formula sheet, but none of it is in your head, then it's beside the point. They sort of miss the point of the exercise. I didn't tell you to do a formula sheet just because of a formula sheet. I told you to do a formula sheet because I didn't want you to waste your time while studying, flipping through notes and textbooks and going to YouTube to find information, because now you're going to actually increase frustration, increase time wasting. It's nice to have everything in one place so that you can access the knowledge very quickly and your study session is a lot less intense, a lot less just all over the place and frustrating, right? That was the point, to get the knowledge in your head more efficient. It wasn't just to create the formula sheet. Right? So this is how things like that happen. A lot of people just know, okay, to do good in a class, I just need to do the homework. I need to create a formula sheet. I need to do this. I need to do that. And a lot of times they'll even go through the motions and they'll do all of this, but they completely miss the point of doing all of it. And then they don't realize that they're missing the point because they never paid attention to it for whatever reason. They were unaware of the point. Right? So they would think, okay, I go to tutoring, the tutor explained to me, I got it. So that means success tutoring. No, it doesn't. If you keep in mind, again, you are the measuring stick, then you'd realize that, you know what? The point of tutoring is not to go and have someone explain things to me. The point of tutoring is to go and help someone explain something to me so that I can do it, which means a tutoring session has to have a component where you're the one talking and not the tutor. And the tutor is just watching you do something and then guiding you, right? So a lot of students go into tutoring and they kind of let the tutor do all the work, all the talking, or most of it. And so the tutoring session is, yes, it's largely a waste of time. But it is time that you made time for. You rearranged your schedule. You went down to tutoring. You physically got to the space. You spent 2 hours there. You feel like you deserve something for that 2 hours. So then you come back into and you take a test, and then you realize you do bad on the test, and now it's like, well, that was a waste of my time, or this class sucks, or it's just hard, or maybe I'm just not cut out for this. But the truth is, yes, you are good to take the initiative to do this thing, but you are missing the point of that thing, and you weren't aware of what that thing was meant to accomplish. And you also weren't aware that the thing that was meant to accomplish actually was not accomplished. A lot of people think that it's accomplished. A lot of people tell you that, oh yeah, I understand what's going on in class, but you're getting F's and D's. Yeah, but I understand. But you're getting F's and D's. Like it's they think they understand, and they'll tell themselves this story. And when there's a discrepancy in reality, it causes a great deal of distress. And now it's a whole problem. And that just feeds into this narrative now that I'm not a math person, or math teachers just want you to fail, or Jhevon stuff is too hard, right? It just feeds into this story because of a lack of awareness of how the learning actually takes place, what each activity is supposed to accomplish, how much of it you should be doing yourself, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's how things can happen. And some of you are probably even kind of looking back on your old studying and noticing that you have been doing some of these things. But yeah, so how do you go about fixing these issues? I'm going to give you a strategy, okay? And again, like I said, this is the part of the talk where it seems like it would be overly detailed. Like, I don't see everyone doing this. Why do I need to do all this? You're just making it extra complicated. At the end of the day, it turns out that the better a student you are, or the better you are at something, the less you have to kind of follow these rigidly. However, if you're in a situation where you're in a desperate situation, you're at the bottom of the class, you're doing an F or a D, then you're going to need more structure than someone else who's at a B or an A. Like it's a necessary evil. Okay, so I'm going to tell you the structured approach, and I would encourage you guys to not only just hear this, but actually start putting some of this in practice. Some things are easy, some things are hard. Overall, this approach is going to be hard. I'm going to level with you. That being said, there are other times I tell you guys things that are easy to do, but you guys don't do it anyway. That is bad. Remember to go over what I mentioned. You always have to be thinking application is more important than knowledge, right? A case in point. The first lecture I had in all my classes, I mentioned, yes, everything is online. It's like that at most schools right now. And I mentioned that a lot of people have trouble with online learning, but it actually doesn't have to be that way. Yes, there are things that you have to be in person to learn and do, right? So if your class has a lab or something like that, then yes, physically being there in person makes all the difference in the world. In a math class though, or any classes like that, it actually shouldn't affect you at all very much, because most of your learning should happen by yourself at home anyway. Most learning in a math class does not take place during the math class. A lot of students think that going to math class is a part of the learning journey. It's not. It's something to facilitate the start of your learning journey. But I'm digressing a little. So I mentioned, okay, but a lot of people, it's going to be hard to adjust to this online thing. However, here's an easy tip. And if you do this and literally nothing else but this, you will automatically raise your grade like a half a letter or maybe even 2 grade letters. It can make the difference between a D and a C. It can make the difference between a B minus and a B plus or something like that, right? And if you do nothing but this, it will make that difference. And it's actually pretty easy. Some fixes are actually easy. It won't take you from a D to an A. That's not what I'm saying, but it'll give you an extra push, an extra oomph. And that was the most important thing I said. The thing that you definitely want to do in a situation like this is participate. Speak up in class. Ask me questions. Interact. Make sure you do all that stuff. And this semester, I have had one of the least amounts of interactions I have had in my years of teaching. And it's like, I get why it happens. It's online. It's easy to just turn off your camera and zone out, right? You don't have someone physically in front of you. You're not in an environment where everyone is sitting down facing the board in one direction. There's this collective idea that we're all here for a reason. We're all looking in the same direction. We're all paying attention to this person in front of us, right? So it's easy to zone out. It's easy to not participate. And most people don't. Most people turn off their cameras. They don't say anything. And I mentioned that one of the best, the most important things you can do, the easiest thing that's actually going to have a huge effort is just to participate, talk in class. And it's so helpful to the point where it does not even matter if 100% of the things you say are wrong. You can literally participate in class and everything you said in class is wrong. You will literally still get better grades, even though everything you've said is wrong. It's that powerful. It's not even funny. Most people don't believe me. Most people never speak up. I always have the same few students talking in class and actually engaging with me. Most people have their cameras off. They don't say anything. And it's like, it's such an easy fix. Just say something. Make a guess. It doesn't even matter if your guess is wrong. Like I was in class even this week. I made a bunch of guesses in the class. I was wrong most of the time. And yes, a part of me wants to be good to myself and be like, well, I was sort of distracted. You know, construction was going on out my window and I kept looking away. And sometimes I'm writing down something in the notes while the professor moved forward. And, you know, and I'd hear him ask a question to the class, but I'm trying to catch what he said before. And so I would just look up. I noticed no one was saying anything. And like, is it this? I'll just throw out a guess, right? And he was like, good guess, but no, no, Jhevon, that's wrong. Like, okay, all right, yeah, I should. But on the other hand, he was throwing out some easy questions. I should have known better. But I got the things wrong, right? But I wasn't afraid. I said what I thought. This was my guess, right? And a part of that is because I understand I'm not always going to fully understand everything. I'm not going to be fully prepared all the time. Not every test that I sit down and take, I will be 100% prepared. I need to know how to guess correctly. I need to know how I should be thinking about this. So even though I'm distracted and I made a guess, it's possible that I could be distracted in a test and I would have made a wrong guess. I need to know, why are my guesses wrong? Why was that guess wrong? And so the professor would be like, no, that was wrong, Jhevon, because of this reason. So now I remember that. And the next time I'm in a similar situation and I don't know really the right thing to do, I can make a more educated guess. I will get more closer to the actual answer the next time, right? It helps no matter what. So even when you're wrong, you start to learn why you were wrong and what was the way you should have thought of it. That's very important. A lot of students, and I know it happened this semester, it's happened previous semesters as well. A lot of students go through a quiz, and this is also something I should have put in the major concerns above, that things I'm concerned about. I've had students this semester and previous semesters actually tell me, you know what, I did bad on that quiz, but at the moment I was doing it, I thought I was getting everything right. I felt like it was going awesome. I'm totally surprised by this grade, right? So it's like they didn't recognize that their base level of thinking, how they were operating and how they were thinking about things was actually so wrong that even when they were guessing the answers, it's like a multiple choice or it was a fill in the blank or something like that. They thought about the thing so wrong that it led them to choose the wrong choice, but they're convinced that they were making the right choice. And the thing is, speaking up in class fixes that issue in a very large part. You start to learn how to think about something because now you start to get a baseline of where your thinking is versus where your thinking should be. So you say something in class, if you say the right thing, you'll understand, okay, I'm thinking about this thing correctly. My understanding and the professor's understanding, okay. If you say it and it's wrong, you would understand, okay, my understanding and the professor's understanding, not the same place. Why aren't they at the same place? Okay, why was that wrong, professor? Oh, because of this reason. Now you get a little bit closer. You now learn a little bit more. And so even if you literally never actually do one more example or study one more homework problem than you ordinarily would have, you now have a naturally higher level of thinking just because you engaged, right? So some things are going to be easy like that. And it distresses me when I throw out easy advice like that and most people don't follow it, but I can't force people. What are you going to do? However, let's say now, okay, I may or may not believe what you've said so far, Jhevon, but what is your solution? How would I actually go about improving all this stuff? Tell me a roadmap, give me a plan. And like I said, it's probably more detailed than some of you would have to do. However, I would say the lower your overall performance is, the more you should kind of stick to this strategy, I would say. And a lot of this is going to overlap with things. My pre-cal students will see a lot of overlap here. In my pre-cal class, I actually give them more general study advice during lecture than I normally do, because in pre-calc, you have the space for that. In like the higher classes, Calc 1, there's no space. There's too much to teach. I don't have the time to talk about general study advice. But I do give my pre-calc classes some study advice. I anticipate that most of them either ignore it or they don't even realize that they're not applying it correctly, which is the point of this meeting. So let's go. First thing is you need to set a goal. Now, setting a goal, people don't know how to do this. And a lot of people overemphasize the point of a goal or the effectiveness of goals, but a goal is important to some extent. It's also important that your goal is correct. It's actually a goal. A lot of people think they have a goal, but they don't. Like if I ask someone, what is your goal? How do you want to do? And this, I even did ask this in the questionnaire. And I normally ask the questionnaire when I ask people how they feel about this class, what grade they think they're going to get, et cetera, et cetera. But normally when I ask people about goals, they would say things like, oh, I just want to pass this class, or I want to do whatever, right? Or I want to get better at math. I want to pass this class. And the thing is, that is not a good goal. I understand the sentiment behind it. However, it's not something that you will, how do you know if you're good at math? What does it mean to pass the class, right? It's not a good goal for various reasons. When you set a goal, the goal has to have 3 specific components to it. One, it needs to be specific, right? So for example, saying that I want to pass the class, not specific. Saying I want at least a B+ in the class, more specific. Okay, now you're onto something. That's a better goal, right? The second thing is it has to be timely. So you can have a goal that you're going to want to do someday. I want to get better at math someday, right? That's not a good goal. It's not very specific and it's not very timely. You don't have a limit. You don't have a deadline. There's nothing to hold you to any action, right? Thirdly, it has to be measurable, right? So you can't say, I want to be good at math someday. I just want to be a math person. Not a good goal. Wasn't specific. You didn't put a time limit. And what does it mean to be a math person? How is that is there a ruler? Is there a scale for that? Like, how do you know if you're a math person or not? So not a good goal, right? However, let's say you want to get an A in my class, and theoretically, it's still possible for any of my students to get an A, right? Which surprises a lot of people, but yes, even if right now you currently have a D or an F, in theory, you can still get an A in my classes. Okay, so let's put that out of the way. Let me just throw that out there first of all. What does that mean? It means when you set a goal now, you need to be specific. You need to be specific with yourself. It has to follow your narrative, who you want to be. So you will say, here's a good goal. My goal is to get a B+ at least in this class by this date, namely the date of the final. So let's say your final is December 10th. Your goal should be, my goal is to get a B+ in pre-calc by December 10th. That's a goal. Why is it a goal? It's very specific. I want to do something in pre-calculus. What do you want to do? I want to get a B+. B+ is very specific. There's a number there, which means it's also measurable. I can know whether I'm at the B+ or not by just looking at a number. I can see, hey, my report card says a 75. A B+ requires an 85. Am I meeting the goal? No, I am not. it's clear. There's no ambiguity. You know whether or not you're achieving the goal. So that's important. Also, the fact that you gave yourself a time. I need to make sure that I get this done before December 10th because that's when the class ends, right? If I get better at math after the class ends, doesn't really help me, right? So you have a time, right? So it's not just, I want to be better at math. You be specific. I want to get better at this class. Getting better means getting at least this grade, and I need to make sure that happens by this time, right? Because now when you want to move, now when you want to move on to something, someone send me a chat. Now when you want to move on to something, you have something that you're measuring by, and it's not your emotions, it's not how you feel, it's not like, blah, 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 right? It's something like I can see the data whether or not I'm meeting this goal, right? So that's very important. Setting a proper goal, right? This next thing is to have a why. Now, this kind of goes into creating your own narrative, having why you want to do something. This step can also be replaced by having a lot of discipline, but most people who don't have a lot of discipline, it's very hard for them to learn how to get discipline. Although it turns out that the strategy that I'm giving you here you can use it to build anything up, including becoming more disciplined, but whatever. If you don't have any discipline right now, you don't have time to build it. A why is the next thing. It's actually better than having discipline, but discipline can be used as a secondary thing. It's almost as good. So the why is the reason why you want this goal. Why is it that you want to be better? And it turns out the more a good why, and again, this is going to sound crazy coming from a math person or a science person, a good why is not going to be a logical thing. It's going to be very emotional. It's going to be very personal. The more emotional and personal it is, the better. So you can't be like, I want to get a B plus in pre-calc because, you know, my degree requirements require it. And my advisor said, like, I have to check off this box and blah, blah, blah. There's a logical reason why you need a B plus in pre-calc for whatever reason. My GPA needs to be this high to maintain my scholarship or whatever, right? But it's a different thing to say, you know what, I want to prove to myself that I can get a B plus in pre-calc. I want to make my parents proud of me if I can do good in math because I did bad in high school. My parents are always commented on it. I want to make them now proud that, oh, wow, you got an A in math? Wow, you know, like it has to be some sort of emotional reason. There has to be a human reason for why you want this goal. It's the best kind of reason there is. You can get away with a semi-logical reason. You can also get away if you're a very disciplined person, but having a very good emotional why is the best outcome. And if you can do that, you should. And you should actually start thinking about it. Why am I in this class? Why am I in the major I'm doing? Why am I doing what I'm doing? What do I want out of my life? Why am I doing any of this? Right? So that's very important. Okay. So that's the next thing. Because it turns out when things get rough, right? When you have those study sessions or that bad quiz grade, or something just doesn't go your way, or it's just very hard. You're studying this one particular topic and it's particularly difficult for you. And most of the time you're studying, it takes you an hour or two, but this time, like I spent 5 hours on this one topic and it's just not going in my head and you're getting frustrated. What's going to happen is eventually the question is going to come in the back of your mind. Why are you even doing this? This is really important. I should just give up, right? And it might even not be a conscious thought, but somewhere in the back of your mind, you're going to start to realize that if you don't have a good reason for doing it, when it gets tough, you're just going to let it go. There's no real reason for me to hold on to any of this, right? And so that's an issue. You do want a why. Now, the next thing is you really need to learn what it would take to achieve your goal, right? And the more specific and comprehensive you are, the better, right? And this is where awareness is important. Awareness comes in here, right? So some of the mistakes I mentioned earlier can be fixed by this step, right? So when you decide, okay, I need to get a B plus in pre-calc, what would it take to achieve that, right? Doing homework, going to tutoring, Having a nicely written out formula sheet? No. So now you start thinking, okay, I have this goal. How would I get that goal? Well, Jhevon's going to give me a grade. How is he going to give me a grade? Oh, he's grading me based on my quizzes, my tests, and my homework. Okay, so now I realize achieving this goal means I need to perform well in quizzes, tests, and homework, right? And so what does it mean perform well? I was very specific with my goal, B+. It means I need to get at least 85% in quizzes, tests, and homework, right? What does that mean? So now you start to think, okay, I know that that's what it takes to achieve this goal, specifically those things. Jhevon's not going to grade me, even though he recommends it, he's not going to grade me for how much I participate in class. He's not giving me a grade for how tall I am. He's not giving me a grade for, how many questions I asked. He's giving me a grade based on, he graded my quiz. He tallied up what I got right out of the total. He writes down that number and he puts it in my report card. At the end of the day, he's going to look at that report card and that's how he's going to choose the grade, right? So it means to achieve this goal, I need to make sure these factors are in play. So a lot of students will go through the motions and they would think that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. Oh, I spent 3 hours in tutoring. Is Jhevon giving you a grade for how many hours you spend in tutoring? Not worth bragging about, is it? Right? Like, I don't know what you're doing. Oh, I spent 6 hours studying this week. Is Jhevon giving you for a grade for studying for 6 hours? No, like there's no reason why you had to study 6 hours. I wouldn't care if you study for 1 hour, 5 minutes, 6 hours, it doesn't matter. What matters is if I ask you a problem on a quiz or a test, you can actually solve the problem correctly, right? So when you start to realize that and pay attention to that, now you start to be in a situation where you are actually in control. When you realize what matters is how I perform in this context, then you start to make sure that all your other context has to fall in line with that. Okay, if I go to tutoring and I say I'm confused about this, and the tutor says, okay, here's how you do this problem. And I sit down and I listen to him and I understand. Is that a good tutoring session? Well, ask yourself the question, does that help you do better in a test or a quiz? Does a test or quiz involve you sitting down, listening to someone, nodding your head that you understand? Obviously, no. Which means any tutoring session that is the majority of it is that activity is not a helpful tutoring session. You will think that it's helpful because you're like, I'm supposed to go to tutoring. But when you realize why you're doing it, what the goal is, and what you're supposed to be accomplishing, how you're achieving that goal, you're going to realize that, you know what? My tutoring sessions actually haven't been very helpful. I had this emotional sense that they were helpful because the tutor would explain and I would get it and I would feel good about myself that I got it. But at the end of the day, I didn't test myself. I never worked out a problem in front of the tutor. I never timed myself while working out that problem. I don't know how to I never actually did the activity of solving a problem correctly under timing constraints, which is actually what I need to be able to do to get the grade I want, right? So you see, there's a difference, right? So you can have two students go to tutoring, both of them spending an hour and having very different results, because one person will go to tutoring and they'll kind of like, I don't get anything. Just explain this topic to me. And the tutor will explain it and they'll drop these other examples. You know what? That's a better example than my professor gave me. Yeah, that's awesome. And they leave the tutoring and they think that they've learned something, versus the other person who goes to tutoring like, I'm not sure about this specific part of this topic. I got stuck at this problem. What should I do from here? And the tutor will explain to them. And then they're like, okay, you know what? Give me a similar problem and watch me work it out. And so the tutor will talk for 2 minutes and then we'll give them a problem and they'll work it out. And they'll take 10 minutes working it out. And the tutor will be like, okay, that's right or that's wrong. The person who goes through a tutoring session in that way is going to be much better off, right? And at the end of the day, both people spent an hour at tutoring, but one person got to the important part. What is tutoring supposed to accomplish? It's supposed to facilitate me doing problems by myself. My tutor is not going to be there with me in a test. Jhevon's YouTube videos are not going to be there with me in a test. My notes aren't going to be with me. Like my study group isn't going to be with me in a test. Just participating in a study group, participating in tutoring, doing homework WebAssign is not going to be there with me in a test. Just going through the motions of these things is not good enough. You have to know what are these things supposed to accomplish, and you have to be able to know that they're accomplishing what they accomplish. And because you've set a goal that's measurable, you will know that they're accomplishing what they're accomplishing. You will know. So if your goal is to, I want to make sure that I'm getting at least a B, which means you're getting around 80%. It means that every time you go to a tutoring session, you should be doing 80% of the talking at least. And you should be getting 80% of the things you say correct, at least, right? That is the goal. That's what you're pushing for, right? And so if you go to tutoring and you practice 10 problems with the tutor, 8 of them need to have been done all by yourself, no help from the tutor, and they need to have been correct. If that occurred in your tutoring session, it was a useful, meaningful tutoring session. If that did not occur, then it wasn't as good as it could be, right? And of course, you might start out worse than that. Your tutor might give you 10 problems and you only got 3 correct. Well, what that means is now you need to work harder. Why did I get the others wrong? You learn about that, you try again, and you slowly build it up. Eventually you'll get 4 out of 10, then 5 out of 10, then 6 out of 10, right? With some work, you'll eventually get there. But you just need to know the goal is to be able to do something by myself under time conditions, to be able to solve problems of this level. So that is very important. So learn what it takes to achieve your goal and make sure that whatever you do is serving that. If you're writing down a bunch of formulas, but you don't remember any of them, writing down your formulas is a waste of time. Even though I would recommend everyone writing down their formulas, but it's only a good recommendation if you apply it correctly. And you'll only know to apply it correctly if you set a goal that's measurable and it's good and you can measure it and you have a good reason why it's happening and you know what it's going to take to achieve your goal and you know that you're specifically doing this in service of that, right? I'm not just doing homework because Jhevon said I'm supposed to do my homework. No, I'm doing the homework because if I learn this homework and I can do it by myself, I will be able to reproduce that on a quiz, right? Which means if you get through your homework by looking at external sources, then yeah, getting through your homework, even though it's something you're supposed to do, it's going to largely be a waste of time, right? If you're doing your homework and out of 10 problems, you're not getting 8 out of them correct by yourself, without looking at anything, without going to the YouTube, without checking your notes, without doing anything, if you're not getting them by yourself, you're not a B student. You might get through the homework and get 100%, but because you use external help, it's not really you. You are the measuring stick. So you're going to come away with this idea, well, I got through all my homework and I got 100%, so I understand everything. But that's because you never really paid attention to what the homework was supposed to accomplish, right? Now, the people who have fun automatically will do this, right? So they're not going to have to think about, oh, this is a measurable goal. If someone enjoys math and they start practicing all the time, they will tend to reach out to external sources less because they enjoy going through the problems themselves and figuring it out and tinkering with it. So while they in their mind won't have to necessarily think of it in this structured way, because you don't naturally enjoy it, you have to impose a structure on yourself to get there. And so, yeah, I know you'll know people who, I don't know anyone else who studies this way. Well, you're not them, right? There are reasons why it's working for them. They'll end up doing things naturally that I'm telling you here point blank that you should be doing, right? So a lot of times you're looking at, well, my friend is getting an A and they don't have to do any of this. You're not getting an A, which means you can't do what your friend is doing, right? You have to do something else, right? Maybe your friend enjoys it. Maybe your friend had prior experience. Like, you don't know, right? What experiences your friend has, what kind of brain they have, how they think about things, what they enjoy, what they don't enjoy, right? It's going to have different results, right? So you just need to make sure that you are doing what it takes to achieve the particular result that is going to make you achieve a specific timely goal. Right? Once that's in the way, you will waste less time. You will know immediately when a tutoring session, this tutoring, like within 5 minutes of the tutoring session, you'll know, you know what, this hour is not going to be productive. I need to change things up right away. Because I realized for the last 5 minutes I've been here, my tutor has just been talking nonstop and I haven't been able to do a single problem. That's not good. Even if I understand everything he's saying, it's not good. Something needs to change right now. Because you're keeping the right things in mind, you'll be able to maneuver your activities so that they actually pay off. so that you don't end up in this situation where you're just working for many hours and not getting a good result. Because sometimes what's happening is you're not spending that time efficiently. It's not it's not accomplishing what it should be accomplishing, right? Also, have an objective. Step 4. So I'm really elaborating here. So also, you want to have an objective way of measuring yourself. So again, this is something that happens all the time. Students will come to me, but I study, I do all the homework, I understand what's going on in class. You know, I feel like I know everything. It's not objective enough. What does the data say? And a lot of students will actually overblow their progress because, again, they're not aware of how to properly assess what they're doing. So here's something that typically comes up, and it happened with a couple people even this semester, but it's always been happening. A student will sit down, right? They'll even do everything I said so far. They'll come up with a goal and blah, 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 right? So they're like, all right, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to spend an hour, and I'm going to get through these 5 problems, right? And they would go, okay, all right. They put out their study problems. It's not the right level of difficulty for the kind of thing that I would ask in class. And so they'll write down these problems. Okay, problem 1. They started in problem 1, and they got stuck. Okay, okay, yeah. Let me check the notes. I think Jhevon did something. Okay, all right. And they read the notes and they got through problem 1. Okay, problem 2. Okay, problem 2. Oh, they got stuck again. Okay. I don't remember Jhevon doing anything exactly like this in the notes. Let me check WebAssign, the e-textbook. Ah, yeah, totally makes sense. Duh. Okay, finish problem 2. Go to problem 3. That's strange. I don't know. Maybe, okay, I'll go, all right, let's see. Okay, this YouTube video. Let's see what they did. Oh, that's nice. That's even easier than the way the professor did in class. Awesome. All right, boom, boom. Okay, problem 4. I don't even know where to begin. Oh, I remember my friend told me that problem 4 was crazy and he figured out this really great way to do it. Okay, let me text my friend. Yo, what did you do for problem 4? Oh, it's a really neat trick, dude. It's this. Awesome. I really love that. That's a nice trick. Okay. Then you get to problem 5. All right. Hey, this is actually easy. Okay. They finish problem 5, right? Now, if I were to ask that student, so how did you study for this test? They would probably tell me, well, you know, I spent an hour and I did 5 problems. Okay. Now, here's a question I want to throw out to you guys. How many problems did that student actually do?
None.
None? I would say 1, right? Remember problem 5? Right? Remember problem 5? I didn't say they looked at anything. They actually just did it, right? So in that student's head, they spent an hour and did 5 problems. In reality, they spent 10 minutes and did 1 problem. You get what I'm saying? The moment you have to go external to yourself, you're not using you as the measuring stick. The moment you need to reach for help, you need to consider that problem as not something that was done, right? So the first problem, they checked the notes. The second problem, they checked WebAssign. The third problem, they looked at a YouTube video. The fourth problem, they asked their friend. The fifth problem, they got through. The thing is, you cannot think of that as you doing 5 problems. You did 1 problem. Other people helped you do the other 4. So you might look at that and, well, I did 100% of these problems. I got them 100% correct. Well, no, you got 20% correct, right? And you didn't spend an hour studying. You actually spent 50 minutes looking up what other people did, applying it to your work, and then you spent 10 minutes studying, right? Like this is the kind of thing you have to be aware of, right? So you have to know how to actually assess how much work am I actually putting in? What am I actually getting done? What is the progress that's actually being made? Because if you're not paying attention, you're going to start to realize that, you know what, I'm actually putting in less work than I thought I was. And there are a bunch of ways that you can do this that I would suggest that you take advantage of. But something that I've suggested even recently is You know what? Every time you study or do your work, do it in 2 different color inks. Every idea that you came up with, you do it in black ink. Every time you had to go somewhere else to find the answer, write it down in blue ink. And you'll be surprised, right? You'll have students who are getting 100% on their homeworks. And if they made this change, they'll realize that every time they get through a homework, most of it is blue ink and only a little bit of it is black ink. And so they come away with this idea that, oh, I'm getting everything, but then they go into a test and it doesn't work out. And it's because they're not actually aware of how much work they're doing, what it's accomplishing, any of that, right? So you need to make sure that you are the measuring stick. If you didn't do the problem all by yourself, it doesn't count, right? It counts in the sense that it will help you do better in the future. But as for now, you cannot judge your current status based on, I read the solution somewhere and I understood it. It doesn't work. Eventually, the better you become as a student, you'll actually be able to get away with that a little bit more. Like an A student, like you can't have an A student and a C student get stuck on the same problem, read the same solution, both understand it, but the A student will be able to go into a test and reproduce it. Whereas with a C student, if any little thing is changed about the problem, they'll totally get confused, right? This happens a lot, right? The worse you are at something, the more likely you're to misjudge yourself. And that's actually going into Dunning-Kruger effect, which I listed here, which we can talk about later. But that's very important. So it's very important that you at least start practicing early proper self-assessment until you get to a point where you know that you're assessing yourself correctly. You need to find a way to objectively assess yourself, right? So I'm not good because I finished the homework. I'm good because I finished 8 out of 10 problems. It's objective. It's right there on the paper. Like I can count it, right? I know that I get it because I did 8 out of the 10 problems, or I did 9 out of 10 problems. It's not a feeling. It's not because I did the homework or I spent an hour. None of that matters. You're not being graded for any of that. So that's important. Then you want to create a plan to improve. So when you assess yourself, maybe you're like, I want to get an A in this class. I want to get at least a 90% or 93 or whatever. And you realize that I assess myself objectively and I'm not there. I'm at a 55 or a 60 or a 7, right? You need to now create a plan to get from the 55 to the 95, right? It's very important that you are creating this plan with awareness. You need to know what is the problem, why you're getting the lower grade in order to put in the right changes. So a lot of times a student would be in a situation where they're not doing as well and they just think, oh, I just need to do more. I need to study longer. I need to do more problems. And sometimes it's not that. That's not what they need. Sometimes they just need to do something like read the definitions or read the problem correctly. I had a lot of students, and I've had a lot of students in the past, where they get problems wrong a lot, mostly because they just didn't read the instructions, right? It's not that they couldn't do it. Like if I explain to them the instructions, oh, you should have done this, they can do it right in front of me. But because they just read over the instructions very quickly, they answer the problem incorrectly, right? So that student didn't actually need to practice more. They didn't need to spend more time. They just need to understand, I got this wrong because I misread the instructions. I should read the instructions more. And then you'd realize, I don't actually need an extra 5 hours to be an A math student. I just need an extra 5 minutes to read over the instructions clear, right? So each person is going to have an individual things that make them not perform as well. You need to be aware of what those things are, right? So that's where awareness comes in. And I think I'll talk a little bit more about that later, right? But then once you're aware of, okay, I am here, I want to be here, what are the things that are keeping me here versus here, right? Then you're going to be like, what's the goal? What should I be accomplishing? Why do I want to accomplish it? Is what I'm doing now accomplishing that? I spent an hour studying yesterday. What were the things that I actually did in that session that directly applied to my goal? You might find that nothing you did applied to the goal. You might find that, oh, only actually 20% or 50% of that study session applied to the goal. You might realize that I actually spent more time looking stuff up and recopying my notes and going over examples in class than I did actually doing any new problems, right? Like you need to start keeping track of it, right? And when you go to something like tutoring or something like that, you want to increase your awareness. You want to be specific in the sense that when you go to a tutor and you're like, okay, I got this problem wrong, I don't know. Don't just, okay, back to the drawing board, crush up the work, throw it away. All right, let's start from scratch. No, examine the problem that you got wrong. Why did you get it wrong? In which line did I go off the rails? In which line did I get stuck? Why was I stuck? The tutor might says, oh, you got wrong. You're wrong here because of in line 4, you make this mistake. Dwell on that mistake. Why is that a mistake? What was the better thing to do, right? You need to learn specifically why you're getting things wrong. And then you put a plan in place to address that. So the tutor will say, oh, you didn't read the instructions. That's not what you were supposed to do. You should make a note to yourself. Oh, that's why I got it wrong. I didn't read the instructions, right? Or, oh, you thought here that if this thing is 0, it means that that is the conclusion. But actually, that concept is incorrect. You should make a note of that. Okay, I had this incorrect concept that this follows. The correct concept is this, right? So once you know why you personally, and this is a very personal journey, different people have different things. Once you know why you are not performing, then you put a plan in place that addresses those specific things. And again, you want to address them in a way that it falls in line with the goal that you want to accomplish. You want to make sure that the changes I'm putting into place, they're specifically targeted at getting better at this activity, right? It's going to be very important. Okay. So you're going to create a plan. You're going to execute a plan. You don't want to take too long. I think this should have been, this should have been here. Okay. Once you actually come up with a plan, execute the plan. And don't spend too long on it. This is another thing that people get into a lot of trouble for. They think everything has to be perfect. They have to have the perfect plan. They have to have the perfect strategy. The truth is, a good plan executed quickly or an okay plan executed quickly is better than the perfect plan executed too late, right? So come up with a plan that, to the best of your knowledge, addresses these issues. Put it into practice immediately. Then you're going to assess again, right? I think I pressed. I did something wrong. I'll fix that. I'll fix this in the notes. So the idea is I messed up the formatting. You create a plan, addressing your issues, put the plan into effect immediately. It might not even be the best plan. You can discuss the plan with me or a tutor or something, and we can say, yeah, that's a good thing to do, but not really. I remember someone telling me about plans that they had tutors suggested to them and things of that sort. And it would be something like, oh, write down a list of common problems and their solutions, or a list of common things, and know how to do those things so that if you ever see something familiar in a test, you'll know how to approach it, right? Which, it's an okay plan if you chose the right problems in the first place. If you choose problems that your professor wouldn't actually ask you about, it's not really a good plan, right? So, but it's better than no plan, and it's better than not doing anything. You will learn something, and chances are you will pick something that you kind of know is going to come up, right? So you're in my Cal 2 class, you know that certain things are going to come up in integration, like integration by substitution, or you're in my pre-cal class, you know that factoring is going to come up. So you'll pick some common factoring situations. Okay, in this situation, I would use the AC method. In this situation, right? So there are things you can pick, but at the end of the day, strategies like that, not the best, right? but it's better than nothing. So you come up with an effective plan, execute the plan, make tweaks as you go along. Once you put a plan into place, assess again and again, assess objectively by metrics, by numbers, by data, by counting, not by your emotions. So you realize the issue, you assess yourself, you realize there's an issue, create a plan that addresses the issues, put the plan into effect, assess again. Did the plan work? Did it not work? How do I know that it worked? Did it work a little bit? Did it work a lot? If not, now you have to go back and assess, well, what did my plan leave out? Then you tweak the plan again. Maybe you talk to me, maybe you talk to someone else to say, oh, here was my plan, here's what I've been doing. I realize there's some benefit, but it's not as beneficial as I want. Is there something better that I could be doing? And I could tell you, or a tutor could tell you, and so on. And you tweak the plan and you do it again. And you rinse and repeat. You persevere. That is step 7. Just don't give up. Keep pushing, right? Repeat steps 3 through 6 until the goal is achieved. You get to the point where you are getting the grade you want by yourself under time conditions. Everything, all the metrics that should be there, not my emotions, not how I feel, not how much time I spend studying, the right things that should be measured, the measurements are good. You get there, and if you want to improve, you can try to improve, but if not, just keep doing that for the rest of the time and you'll be fine, right? And so the perseverance is the other part. Like sometimes people start on something good and then they give up and then they stop, right? And like I said, in all this, awareness and specificity is key, right? And this comes down to when you're coming up with a plan, not only being aware of what the issues are, but you need to be specifically address the issues. So some students might realize that, you know what my problem is? I realize I know what's going on, but you know what, the test, I always run out of time, right? So this is an issue. I run out of time, right? So what that means is any plan you put in place must address that issue. It must address you getting faster time-wise, right? If your plan does not address that, it's not a good plan, right? So you need to know that whenever I put a plan, it should be a very specific plan. It addresses specific issues. I know exactly why I'm doing this thing in this plan, right? I need to get faster, right? And I gave a lot of you guys suggestions on things of that sort, especially my Calc 2 class, and how to get faster on certain things, certain mental practice that you can do and things of that sort. But yeah, right? You need to know what the issues are and then make something specific to address that. So if your problem is not your work ethic, you're actually doing a lot of problems, and your problem is, oh, I always run out of time on tests, then coming up with a plan that just has you do more homework problems is not going to help, right? You need to do problems faster. So instead of doing more problems or more practice, what you need to tweak in your studying at first is just, you know what? I'm not just going to practice. I'm going to practice while timing myself. And just making that one little tweak and just kind of really challenging yourself to get through your practice and your homework faster will automatically carry over to that issue, right? So you definitely want specificity. It's very, very important. And a lot of times it's like you don't want to train for a marathon when you actually want to run a sprint. Yes, there's going to be overlap. Yes, they're both different kinds of running. But if you're training like a marathon runner, on average, you're not going to be the best sprinter, right? It's two different things. It's different enough that you have to get specific. So that's the same thing. So a lot of people, when they get in trouble, it's because they're kind of doing things that, yeah, in general, it makes sense. I want to do well in this class. I should be doing my homework and I should be doing all that stuff, but they're not getting specific enough. They're not making sure that their homework is serving a specific purpose for this. And they're not challenging themselves in this specific way, right? Also, while carrying out the above, is just to be aware of your own limitations as a human being, as a person, how stressed you are, how much sleep you're getting, what environment you're in. Be forgiving to yourself, understanding of yourself is probably better, I want to say. So there are times when you're going to try to have a plan, you're going to try to put it in place, it's not going to work. It doesn't mean you suck. It means you're not at the place where you can apply that kind of plan anymore. Just tweak the plan. Still try to address the issues, try to get better, try to understand that sometimes, especially in the beginning, you're going to misassess yourself. So the Dunning-Kruger's effect is about. Just understand that as a human being, this is something that I do. This is something that we all do. I do it. We're all going to sometimes misjudge how good or bad we are in a certain situation, or how much we understand versus don't understand. It happens. Just be understanding of that, right? So if you're like, I'm not seeing the results I want in 1 week, give yourself a week and a half. Just keep going, right? Don't use it as an excuse, right? Understand that as a human being, you have limitations, you have scheduling limitations, etc. So just be aware of all that. Let's run through. I'm really elaborating more than I anticipated here, but it's a lot of important things, and I'm just pulling from my experience and what I've seen over the years and what my students have been talking about, and I keep talking because there's a lot. Like in a decade, you see a lot of things. You go through a lot of issues. Another thing that's important, students don't realize that is important, is that when you're trying to learn something new, you're trying to become better at something. Awareness of 3 things is very important. Okay, so there are 3 things you need to be paying attention to. The material that you're learning, first of all. So you're in a math class. The material itself is something that you want to be able to do well. Also, your reaction to the material, very important that you are aware of that. I like this topic, but not that topic. I am better at this topic than I am at this topic. I get this wrong because of this reason. I make these mistakes in these situations, right? You need to be aware of how you meet the material, right? And again, by following some of the advice I give earlier, you'll be able to figure this out. If you just start tracking it, just the more data you have, the better, right? You'll start to realize when you start to catalog when you're getting problems wrong, why you get them wrong, certain patterns will start to emerge that are unique to you. I always forget a negative sign, or I always read over instructions, or I always do this, right? So you understand that there's the material, and there are certain things that I bring to the material that can stop me from learning the material effectively. You have to be aware of yourself as well as the material. Another thing you need to be aware of is your external environment and the people around you. I notice that when I'm at home, I don't get as much work done as when I'm at the library. I notice when I'm with this group of people, I'm more productive than when I'm with that group of people. I notice that, my classmate has this strategy and they're getting great results from it, but that strategy doesn't work for me. What are people around you doing? What are your peers doing? What is your superior recommending? What is your teacher recommending? Does that work? Did you try it? Did you experiment? You need to be aware of your external environment. And there are many ways in which that in and of itself can help. It's not even funny. There's a lot of hacking that I could talk about that. And I actually had a story in mind that I wanted to say here about how I actually put that thing in principle once in this creative writing class that I had. Like I had when I was a little Jhevon in undergraduate. Don't really want to go off on this. But I had a creative writing class, right? And for me, my writing was never a problem really. I did okay in English class, and I was used to getting A's for my essays and things of that sort. In this class, I wrote an essay, and there was one time I got an A minus, and another time I got a B plus, and I didn't like that at the time. And the trick to getting an A in that class was not to really change my writing, because I know that I could get A's in other contexts, and I don't think my writing is bad in general. The trick in that class was actually learning more about the professor. So I knew because some of that creative writing, it's graded very subjectively. And subjective, it's hard for people to measure because it's what's going on in someone else's head. And so it might be hard for you to put an objective spin on that. How do I objectively measure whether or not this person is going to subjectively give me a grade for something, right? And once you understand the idea and what you want to accomplish, you can find creative ways to get it done. So in particular, what I used to do is I took advantage of office hours, and I would go to this professor, and I would talk to her about my essays. And she was one of those people who actually just gave me the speeches where it's like, well, most people in my classes don't get A's. It's a hard class, so I judge people very hardly. And I'm like, okay, all right, I get it. All right, so she thinks of herself as a gatekeeper. All right, okay. And then I would go through my essays with her, and I would find out in detail why she gave me the grade she gave me, right? What was wrong? Well, I didn't like your second paragraph. Why didn't you like my second paragraph? Well, I think you could have phrased this better. What would have been a better way to phrase it, right? Like I would ask her questions, much like I encourage you guys to ask me questions. Like I did that as a student. What would have been a better way to phrase it? What word choice would you use? And so what I did in my mind was now I built up to, okay, it seems subjective. However, not really. If I studied this person outside of myself, in their mind, they have a vision of what a good essay is. And they have some objective standards, certain word choices they want to use, certain length that the essay has to be. Oh, a good essay should have around 6 paragraphs, 4 sentences per paragraph or something like that. So they would say something like, oh, I think your paragraph here was too long and drawn out. And I would come back with a question. Well, how short should the paragraph be? Well, I think 4 sentences are good enough. And okay, I would write that down, right? And so I would study the person who is giving me the grade. And I would know now, oh, just conform what I'm doing to fit that idea, right? So it's not that I was a bad writer. It's just that I didn't write in a way that this person liked, right? So it was different, right? In math class, it's more objective, I know, but you can actually apply what I'm saying to even in seemingly subjective situations. I've done it, so I can tell you for sure, and I've had people do it. So yeah, right. Now the above is important for many reasons that I don't want to do too much. I've been talking for way too long. I wanted to even have the interactive portion of this like 40 minutes ago, but let's just kind of get through what I prepared here. Maybe we might have to split this into another session. Who knows? You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems and your habits, right? So once you're not paying attention to the right thing, you might have a goal and you might know that, well, I want to do better. But just having that goal is not good enough. You have to put a system in place. You have to make sure that your environment is falling in line with your goal. The people you're hanging out with fall in line with your goal. Your schedule falls in line with your goal. You're getting enough sleep. You're studying the right things. You're doing the right things. You're studying the right way. And make sure that you set up systems and habits that agree with your goals, right? So that's very important. And for you to be able to set up those systems and habits and effective plans, you need to be aware of these 3 things, right? What does the material require? How do I react to the material? What is the person giving me the grade? Or what are people around me doing? How's my external environment affecting how I absorb the material? These are 3 things that you have to pay attention to. It's not all just one thing. A lot of people just think, to be good at pre-calc, I just need to study pre-calc. To be good at math, I just need to study math. No, you need to know how you react to math, why you react certain ways, how you're going to react in certain situations, what would stump you, what you would get, all that stuff. You also need to know, what does my math professor think is important? Is there anything that my math professor complains about in class that he's put on tests over and over, and students still go, you have those math professors like, every time I told students this, and no one ever listens to me, and every time I give a test, blah, blah. Now you pay attention to that, oh, he's definitely going to put a problem like that on the test. Like now you know exactly what to study for, because you're paying attention to people outside of you. And this is why attending class is important and interacting with is important, because you're also learning about the person who's teaching you. What do they think is important? What would they give me on a test? Like, what do they think constitutes a good answer? What would they likely grade me on favorably as opposed to not, right? There are things outside of you. There are things outside of the material. You need to be aware of these. You need to track them, right? And there's also a famous quote by this ancient Chinese general Sun Tzu. I know some of you might know it. If you know the enemy and you know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself but not the enemy, every time you gain a victory, you'll always lose one. You would be in the situation like that student where it's like, sometimes you do well in math, sometimes you don't. Maybe most of the times you don't or whatever. If you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle. understanding the material and understanding the people external to you, that's like knowing the enemy, quote unquote. Understanding how you react to the material is knowing yourself. You need both components, right? The more you understand the material and what's going on around you, and the more you understand yourself and how you fit into that environment, how you fit into that structure, what causes you to strive in that structure, the better you will do overall, right? That's just, it's actually common sense. That was known. Sun Tzu was in like the 500 BCs. Like this was known for a long time, right? I should probably say something about habits here and how they relate to struggle. I don't know. Maybe come back to this at some other time. Not used to writing. Okay. So just a quick expansion on the above for math class specifically, right? Knowing the material, what does it mean? Each body of knowledge has its own nuance, right? There's a difference when you're studying chemistry versus biology versus mathematics versus physics. You need to understand the material in the sense of what are the things I need to do to get this material? For example, in a biology class, it's much more about memorization than it is about calculation, right? Versus in a math or physics class, it's kind of the opposite. You need to be aware of this, right? So that comes down, again, awareness, right? So when it comes to math, for example, or anything technical like math or physics or something like that, to some extent, chemistry, there's some important things that you would go through for that class that you might not necessarily have to go through for another class. So for example, and one, again, specificity. The dose makes the poison. How much proportion you spend memorizing versus calculation, solving problems will change from setting to setting. You need to be very specific to your setting, know what's required. Knowing definitions and vocabulary is definitely something that you're going to want to know. A lot of students study math they just start practicing examples. They jump into the examples and they kind of study backwards almost. They would just, they open a textbook, they flip to the problem section, they start doing problems. And when they stuck, then they go back and read the textbook. Why was I stuck, right? Which again, if you're an okay A student, you can get away with that. But students who are like not doing so well will not do well with that strategy. You need to start by setting context, know the definitions, knowing vocabulary, knowing things of that sort. I've had situations where a student would come to me and tell me that they're lost on a problem. And I'll give you a situation that happened to me a few years ago that it really stood out because it was just amazing. Like it was, I remember this because it was so amazing, even though it happened many years ago. Like a student came to me, they were in Calculus 3, and they said, oh, I have this problem, right? And it's asking me to find the unit vector. And I'm totally stuck. Find two unit vectors in the same direction as this thing. And I'm like, okay, so what's a unit vector? I just asked that question and they couldn't answer. You see, they didn't realize the definition. They read a problem and they didn't understand the definition of all the words in the problem, right? When a lot of people say math is like another language, a lot of them are being literal. And that's because they literally don't know the vocabulary. They don't know the language. And they just kind of skip over it. They don't think of the language as something that's important, right? And I remember this situation because what happens was the moment I told the student what a unit vector was, this is what a unit vector is, here is the formula. The students solved the problem for me right then and there without me telling them anything specific. I literally only gave them the definition. And they're like, oh, and they solved the problem. The problem wasn't that the student didn't know what's going on. It wasn't that it was a hard problem. It's just like they literally didn't know the definition of the word that was in the problem, right? That happens more often than you would think. A lot of times a student is reading a problem and they don't really know what it's asking. They think they might know, but they don't really. Memorizing rules and formulas exactly. This was an issue that showed up with my Calc 1 class a lot. It shows up with in all classes, really. Students memorize rules. They kind of memorize a rule. They don't pay attention to when I give a rule, which part is a variable, which part is a constant, when can I apply this in which context. And so they tend to do things when they shouldn't do them because they have this rule in their head, but it's because it's misremembered. It causes them to make a lot of errors, right? So again, distributive law shows up here, which goes down into step 3 with the do's and don'ts. So a lot of students will distribute powers across sums, for example. And it's because they know the distributive law. They understand this one context that they kind of know where this thing of expanding parentheses works, and they just go and apply that everywhere. But it turns out that when the thing you're expanding is to the top right corner and it's a power, the rule doesn't work the same anymore. And they never remember that exactly. Like, oh, it matters where the things are, and things of that sort, right? So you want to learn strategies for each problem. A lot of times in class, when I teach you guys how to do something, I take the time to write out step by step. Okay, if you want to solve this problem, here's step 1, here's step 2, here's step 3. If you're approaching this problem type, here's step 1, here's the first thing you think about, here's the second thing you think about, here's the third thing you think about. And still, again, a lot of students skip over that because I would ask them a question, okay, what do we do here? And the responses would often be something that's like step 7 out of a process that I mentioned that, no, you look for this first. You always look for this first. So there are times when I would say that and students skip over it. Things like that actually important. Forms and algorithm, very important for mathematics. There are certain forms that indicate certain things, like there's the difference of squares form, and it doesn't always look like a squared minus b squared. It's pretty much anything to an even power minus anything else to an even power. Then a difference of squares algorithm can kind of work there. So there are certain strategies that go with certain forms. Once you recognize a form, you can automatically know what to do. And so paying attention to forms and algorithms is very important in a math class. The 5th thing is to practice examples to reinforce the above. A lot of students go through studying math and they think that just because they can get through the examples or they can do the homework, that's the main thing. It turns out it's not. You're getting through the homework to reinforce these other things. That's the point. Doing homework should make your knowledge of definitions stronger. It should help you memorize rules. It should help you learn strategies. It should help you recognize forms and do the algorithms. If you're just mindlessly getting through homework and you're not learning any of the above, doing your homework is not going to help you as much. It won't, right? And so it's not going to be specific enough. It's not going to be as helpful. And just as a general tip, language, being able to talk about your material, which is another thing that participating in class helps with. There was a podcast called Words on NPR a few years ago, where they can tell you for sure that your language is tied to your cognitive abilities. There are times when I'm tutoring people who, English is not their first language, and I would notice that when they're doing arithmetic, they would mutter. They're talking to me in English, but they'll mutter arithmetic in their own language, right? So it's like being able to think is actually connected with your language more than you realize, which means you can literally become better at something and understand it more just by virtue of being able to talk about it better, to be able to talk about it more specifically and more correctly. And that's another one of these easy tips that people just look over where it's like, no. So there are times when a student would say something in class and they'll be almost correct. And I'd say, not exactly. You want to phrase it this way, right? And sometimes, well, yeah, that's what I meant, but that's not the important thing. The important thing is for you to get the language. You need to phrase things a certain way. You need to get comfortable with talking about the math in a certain way. And it turns out just being able to talk about it in language, in everyday language, automatically makes you better at understanding it, right? So there are experiments where people temporarily take away people's ability to use language, and their cognitive ability literally degrades to the point of being a toddler, right? So, and they ran experiments with it. It's not even funny, right? So that's probably something that we can do. Right. Knowing yourself, I kind of talk about that. How do you react to the material? What mistakes you make? Paying attention to all that. How do people around you? Blah, 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 blah. Forget this. This is something that we can do later. So something that I've been talking about a lot is awareness. And some of you might say, well, yeah, I think I make some of these mistakes that you've been talking about, but I'm not even aware that, how do I even know? Awareness is such a fuzzy thing. Like, how do I get awareness? Right? Like, how do I know to become aware? How do I notice what mistakes I was making if I didn't know? Obviously, I'm here because I didn't realize I wasn't doing the right thing. You know, I thought I was doing fine, which is why my grade is surprising to me. Uh, so awareness is a very strange thing. But it turns out that if in principle you apply what I've mentioned before, then you can actually use it to build up your awareness. You can use it to build up your discipline. You can use it to build up anything. Like I said, you can get better at almost anything by going through the strategies that I've mentioned, right? There's a principle towards getting better, right? So first of all, when it comes to getting more aware, what you want to do is you want to now just start noticing things that you ordinarily wouldn't notice. So identify what you do versus what others do, right? Just start noticing, right? If you did a homework problem and I did a similar problem example in class, what was the difference between how I did it versus you did it? Why was there a difference? Was your difference still correct? Just start pointing things out like that to yourself, right? Whenever you get something wrong, identify, as I mentioned earlier, specifically why you got it wrong. In which line of it, don't just say, I got it wrong, let me start over. No, identify where you got it wrong. Make a note of why you got it wrong. I got it wrong for this reason. Write it in a different color ink. Maybe study now with 3 inks. Write it in red ink, why you got it wrong. Make a big deal out of it, make a note of it. A very common issue and error that hurts students is sometimes they would blow things off by saying it was a silly mistake. Like, oh, you know, I really understand it, but I just made a bunch of silly mistakes. Or, you know, I got this wrong for a silly mistake. And they never really pay any attention to it. From now on, pay attention to it, right? Yes, people make silly mistakes. However, consistently making a silly mistake in and of itself is not a silly mistake. It's a big mistake. It ends up hurting you in the long run when you repeatedly make silly mistakes. So just start noticing them, even if it looks silly. Oh, I just dropped the negative sign. That's why I got it incorrect. Write down in red ink, I dropped the negative sign. Every time you drop a negative sign, write down in red ink, I dropped the negative sign. Write down the phrase in your notes on your work, right? This will elicit something that your brain is already pretty good at, called the blue car syndrome. Some of you probably know it. It's like when something becomes important to you, you start to notice it more. So it's like if you go out and you buy a blue Honda Civic, suddenly you're going to notice a lot of blue Honda Civics around. Your brain just automatically, now that this thing is important to you and your brain understands that, hey, this is now important, it automatically starts to notice things. So when you start interrupting your own study sessions to write down the mistakes you're making, your brain is going to get the signal, hey, they keep stopping writing this down in a different color ink repeatedly. This is probably important. What's going to happen is your brain is automatically going to start rewiring itself to notice every single time you drop a negative sign. It will no longer be a simple mistake for you. Because now you've made a big deal out of it. Your brain, you're going to notice when it's happening. You'll naturally build up your awareness. Okay. So that's important. Notice when you come across knowledge and it was pointed out that you came across it before, right? So let's say you ask a question and it happens. It happens to everyone. It happens to me. Don't be afraid to ask a question. But let's say you ask a question and someone is like, oh, well, I told you that last week. This was the answer. Or, oh, I sent you an email last week and I answered that. Or, oh, just read this. It was there, right? Make a note of that. Make a note every time you see something that you ask a question that you forgot that you saw it before, right? Your brain will naturally rewire itself. It will tend to start to remember these things, these instances, right? Just the mere act of you keeping this record and emphasizing it, it will increase your natural awareness. At first, it's going to be something like, oh man, now I have to keep some notes on myself. But eventually, you're going to realize I don't have to keep the notes on myself anymore because I naturally now I'm just aware of it. So those are just some ideas for doing that. By the way, I didn't really put in any references or anything for anything that I've said. So, I mean, if you're interested in some references, maybe some situations that can expand on what I told you, more ideas, you guys can let me know if you want to know some other sources that you can read and apply, read or watch and apply. You can let me know about it. I didn't put any sources in it. Some of these things I have bona fide sources to back them up. Some of it is just like over 10 years having thousands of students at this point. I just realized that this is a common problem. So you guys can let me know. I do realize now that we're literally out of time. I talked for more than twice than I expected to. So I'm not going to hold any of you here if you really have to go. You really only signed up for now. But if any of you want to stick around and maybe talk about some of the things you heard, maybe say, well, yeah, I see what you're saying, Jhevon, but I don't think that would work in my situation or whatever. If you want to hang around and maybe mention some of those things, you guys can do it. Is there anyone who has anything to say or any issues that they want to bring to light? Or just anything that's been bothering you, anything you've been studying over the past week, or anything that you're like, oh, I've been trying to do this, but it hasn't been working.
I'm willing to.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
I find that because of the way that it's scheduled with us not meeting in classes and just because so many things are over Zoom, I find that I've been deprioritizing watching your lectures.
Okay.
And I just keep pushing them off until later and later.
Okay.
And just struggling on the lack of self-discipline to watch them when I should.
Okay. And maybe tell me a little bit more about why you think you end up in that situation. Like why, so you mentioned, and this is of course a very common problem, time management, and you have so much to do, so little time. But maybe tell me about why you would push it off. Like what's going on? Like how many classes are you doing?
5 classes.
It's a lot already right off the bat. How many are sciences?
Math and computer science.
Okay. All right. So 5 classes, a lot of time, lots of Zoom,
and
lots of, right. And again, because it's like a removed nature, it's also kind of weird too, right? Like you're not physically in a space talking to people. It's easy to kind of just push off your computer screen versus push off a person who's standing in front of you. So yeah, there's that. So what I would say for you, again, is if you notice that this is the issue, again, so you're going to be aware. So now, which is good. You're aware of one of the things that you think might be causing a problem, right? So now you have to start thinking, okay, I think me pushing off watching the lectures is an issue for me. I've identified this issue. What you immediately need to do is come up with a plan to address the issue. So it's very easy to say, well, maybe I'm just not disciplined. Okay, no, don't accept that. Come up with a plan. Like, okay, I need to somehow get a way that I need to watch the lectures earlier. A part of this is going to come up with just doing a schedule, right? That helps some people. Sometimes just having a to-do list. I know I need to watch this lecture sometime before the next quiz. Some people can get away with that. Some people they'd have to literally put it in a time slot. Like, you know what? I can't really watch the lecture during the scheduled class time because you know what? They schedule me in a morning class. I'm just not all there in the morning. However, at nighttime on Tuesdays and Thursdays between 7 p.m. and 8:15 p.m., it's on my calendar. The lectures are getting watched here, right? And just try to stick to that, right? So that might work for some people. And again, I'm just speaking in general terms here, but it's up to you. You would kind of know if a schedule will help you versus not. And if you're not sure, you try it, you experiment. Look at other things. There are going to be other things in your life that are kind of also annoying that it's easy to push off that you don't push off, right? You can also identify those things, what those guys are, and why do you stick to them anyway, right? and start to just realize, why would you stick to that anyway, right? So, and then you realize, oh, well, even though it's kind of annoying, I do this anyway at this specific time because it's connected to this other thing, right? And so can I find a way to get my math class connected to that other thing, right? A lot of times you want to group things together, right? So you want to become more flexible. I'm starting just a general thing. You want to become more flexible, whatever, right? So you said, okay, you know what? I'm going to go into a routine. I'm going to do my stretches every day. And I come up with a list of stretches that I'm going to do every day. Yeah. But then you wake up, you don't feel like stretching it's easy to push it off. Like it's not a part of your routine, whatever. Right. However, you will notice this other habit that you have. I wake up every morning, I drink a cup of coffee. Doesn't matter how I feel. Doesn't matter if I woke up sore or relaxed. It doesn't matter if I had a lot of sleep or a little sleep. I literally always drink coffee. I always have this habit, no matter what's going on. I never put it off, right? What you can do is now you can connect the two. You can just promise yourself, okay, while I'm heating up the water to make my coffee, I'm going to stretch down and touch my toes. And you just connect stretching down and touching your toes without bending your knees, or trying your best to do it while your coffee is getting ready. Kind of link the routines together. You know what I mean? So like, I know when I wake up in the morning, press the kettle on the coffee, stretch and touch my toes. And now those two things just go together, right? And then I drink my coffee, and you've now accomplished something because you connected it to something that you're naturally doing anyway. That's something that you want to do. So if there's anything else that you follow in a rigid schedule, sometimes a strategy that would work is that you connect something that you want to get done that you're not getting done to that schedule. If you realize that there's anything that you enjoy, and it's possible for you to do something passively while you're doing that thing, that might be fine. So for example, let's say you are a runner, you go running every day, you enjoy running, right? And you know what? I'm not good with memorizing some definitions or whatever. So I'm going to find a YouTube video that sings a certain formula in a catchy tune. I'm going to put it in my headphones while I'm running, right? I'm going to listen to a math lecture while I'm running, right? Like you're going to be running anyway. Just now change the activity that you're doing while you're running. So there are a multitude of strategies, and again, it depends on you. Like you're going to be different, and I can throw out a bunch of ideas, and some of them you'll know immediately, well, that won't work for me. And then you might have ideas, oh, that might work. You try it, you come up with a plan, and again, it doesn't matter if it's perfect. Execute right away, then assess, right? Okay, let me try this strategy. Next week, did it work? How often did I watch the videos on time versus slacking off, right? You measure it, you can count that number of times. And then you're like, okay, it worked or it didn't work. Then you try something else, right? You continue to tweak, right? So yeah, it comes down to you're addressing a problem. Make sure that you know that this is a part of your problem. Like literally watching the lectures late is definitely affecting my performance. If you definitely know that that's a connection, then yes. If you know it might be a connection, then yeah, try to put a plan in place. It's also possible that it might actually not be hurting you at all. You don't even know, but you have to start being aware. Was that helpful at all? Or
I think somewhat.
do you think something like that could work? Like did anything spark a bell or?
Not so much.
Yeah. So what do you think would work? Why do you think you put off the lectures?
I think part of the reason I put off the lectures is I have the story I tell myself, my narrative, is that because in high school, math came pretty easily to me, and I did.
And you could do things last minute, so it worked then, it should work now. Yeah. Okay.
And I didn't have to work hard in high school, to do well in math. Or at least I don't remember working very hard.
Yeah.
So I spend, the time on different classes, which I think I have the self-image of needing to spend more time working on.
Okay. And yeah, that also makes a lot of sense. So you don't think it's a matter of your structure, your schedule. You just think it's a matter of how you view mathematics and your relationship to it. Is that correct?
I don't know that that's all of it, but I think that contributes.
Yeah. Okay. So do you find that that's actually true now, that you do have to work harder?
Well, the amount of work that I'm currently putting in is not getting me the results that I would like to get. So.
Right. So you do feel like you need more.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, so it that comes down to rewriting the narrative. And what I guess what you can do in that situation is, again, making you want to connect somehow, because I assume the results that you're not getting that you would want is from, quizzes and stuff in class, right?
Yeah.
So the thing is, having the quiz tell you that you're not getting the results you want, you don't want that, right? Like, you don't want the quiz to be your actual grade to be the thing that tells you, hey, you're not getting the results you want. So what you're going to probably want to do is you want to give yourself pre-quizzes. So now something that might work for you is going to be the strategy of kind of rearranging your studying differently. How much testing yourself do you do when studying?
That's the problem. I haven't been doing enough work beforehand.
Oh, well, that's the problem right there.
Yeah.
And that's something I've already addressed. So
I said at the beginning, I just haven't been I haven't been watching the lectures with enough time to do any studying before.
right. So you're gonna have to start doing something. So that's the first thing.
Yeah.
So now, once you realize that you want to do better on a quiz grade, the idea is now what you want to do is try to do the topic that the lecture was supposed to cover, like, right away, right? And try to start testing yourself on it. You will actually slowly rewrite that story in your head, because you're going to be in a situation where, yeah, I have this belief that, math should come easy, but when you actually sit down and start to doing it, you're going to realize that you're not getting the questions correct when you test yourself. Like, if you time yourself, or you're testing yourself, or you're checking things, that's going to slowly rewrite that story in your brain. Whoa, I actually need to put a little bit more time into this, right? Just by you actually going through the motions, your brain is actually going to start picking up on that. It's going to, it seems like it's important to you to do better. So your brain is going to naturally know that I need to get this timing issue under control. The thing that you haven't really been even practicing with a structure in the first place is definitely going to be a big problem. So yeah, that's probably what I would say. So again, for you, do it. You're going to start here. You're going to now set a goal. You're setting, I'm not satisfied with what I'm getting. State specifically what you want, right? I want an A. This means 94%. This means on this week's homework, I need to get 94% doing it by myself, right? And start like that with the first homework. Start like that with the homework this week. And if you realize that I couldn't do most of it by myself, I need to work a little harder, your brain is going to start telling you, oh, you need to work a little harder. You need to get a lot more structure in. And at this point, you're going to start, well, why do I need to work a little harder? Why was I confused about that? Okay, I think I'm confused about that because of this. Here's the plan to improve, and blah, blah, blah. And you just go through these steps. I would actually start here then. Like, I don't think you actually have that really in mind. It seems like there's just too much lax, right? Which in high school, you got away with it. But in college, as you're learning, and this is going to become more true the farther you go in college, unfortunately, you're going to start learning that that becomes more true. You're going to have to actually put in a lot more work than you think. High school is a very different environment. They have very different strategies. There are very different ways of assessing you than a college instructor would. There is definitely a cultural gap. So yeah, that's another thing. A lot of students study the way they do in high school, and it totally messes things up. So based on what you're saying, the more you're talking, I'm getting a better picture. I think the overall just structure of how you're doing things needs to be addressed. So that's what I would do. Take some time today, think about what you want, think about putting a structure on it. In going through that structure, you're going to naturally start to convince yourself, you know what, I need to put some more time into this. Like your narrative about yourself will automatically change once you're in that situation. And hopefully that helps. I would try that and see how it goes.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yeah, so I mean, I did dump a lot of material on you guys here today, and I spoke for a lot longer than I intended. So I understand that a lot of this might be overwhelming and you need to actually come back to it. So I don't know, maybe in the future I'll have another session of this where it's more of this interaction, just going through and kind of brainstorming with each other. And by the way, I would encourage that if any of you heard something that a student said and you also have an idea for how to improve, that you can chime in and say it. Like I'm not the only authority here. Some of you might have had the same issue and you overcame it, right? So it would be useful for you to have your input. You're like, yeah, I used to not watch the lectures as well, but then when I started this, it helped, right? So you guys might also have some really good ideas, right? So I do encourage you guys to do that as well. So we might do another one of these, I guess, at some point where it's more of that interaction with more of us talking back and forth. I had a lot of things to bring up here that, yeah, took a lot longer for me to articulate than I wanted. So yeah, like I said, I might even decide to extend this to another video or something. So one thing you guys can do is also maybe just send me questions or issues, right? And then I can just address them all at once instead of, because what I'm noticing with the office hours is that I keep telling different students the same sort of things, the same sort of strategies. And so it's probably nice that if I can just address everything all at once, like everyone knows, okay, if I'm having this issue, here are some ideas to tackle it. So you guys can maybe even send me questions and I can answer them anonymously, right? So I'll just say, here's some Q&As that people, here's a Q&A video. A bunch of students are having trouble with this. So let me address some ideas for doing that. If anyone else has ideas, you can comment on it or respond to it, and I'll maybe even reveal those answers as well. But yeah. Anything else you guys can think of now off the top of your head? Yeah. So maybe we can wrap up here. But again, I would highly encourage you, especially if things haven't been going your way, to actually try to put something like this. This is the main thing I wanted to get across, right? So I spoke a lot about narratives and how you think about yourself and mindset, which is kind of fuzzy. A lot of people won't even know, even if they have a mindset, they won't even know how to fix it. Like I know this is how I feel, even though objectively it doesn't make sense. I know I should be studying more, but I don't, or things of that sort. It's kind of hard to change that when you don't know. So actually getting into something and going through the motions will actually give you a lot more data. You'll actually start to realize why you're doing certain things. And by actually going through the motions, it will also start to change your story about it, and the story about yourself. And so, as I was mentioning earlier, a lot of students have this idea that they're just not a math person. But it turns out if you put an effective plan in place and you actually start seeing incremental improvements, you're actually going to start convincing yourself, hey, maybe I'm not so bad, right? It'll just happen automatically, actually. So the mindset is important, but sometimes you can attack it indirectly. Having a good plan can do that. So I would say, especially if you're really not doing well, put this strategy into place. The main thing, there are a lot of what I was talking about today was addressing why this is a good strategy and why something like this would work. But really, even if you don't understand the whys, actually just putting this into practice is going to work. Because there are very good reasons how the human brain works, how human emotions work. A strategy like this would tend to work for most people. And I would say a strategy like this would work for most people for all people, if they know how to apply it in their lives. Everyone's going to be different, having different struggles, different goals, different limitations. But at the end of the day, if you have a clear goal, you know why you want to achieve that goal. You know what it would take for you to achieve that goal. For you to know how to assess where you are objectively. Put plans in place to address the issues you have, rinse and repeat and reassess and replan and affect the plan, repeat, replan. You're going to naturally get better. You're going to naturally start doing things when you should be doing them. You're going to naturally then start rewriting a narrative in your head of what it takes to achieve the success that you want. And you'll naturally start to become better at things. And that in and of itself feeds into this mindset that not all is lost. I can work harder and fix this. And you'll naturally work harder because now there's hope. Before it's like, well, I don't know. Maybe I'm not a math person. There's no hope in trying. But if you actually put a plan into place and you start like seeing the data, you realize that you are getting better when you start doing these things. It rewrites the narrative. So a lot of that can be dealt with by just actually putting this plan into effect. So I would say that. So probably if a lot of what I said kind of went over your head and even sounds like mumbo jumbo, what I would say is I would try to put this plan into effect in your life in the best way you can. Sit down, think about what you want specifically, timely, put a limit on it. Come up with all these things, put some plans into place. You can check in with me about your plans, why you think they're working, why they're not working. We can talk about something else. But each person is going to have a different struggle. So, yeah. And of course, if you have any more questions, you can send them to me. We'll probably have another session like this where it's more about you guys talking, and or a session where I'm just answering questions that students send me anonymously. Okay, with that, I think we'll wrap up. We're way over time. So we will stop there. Hopefully you found this helpful. Hopefully something I said sparked something. If there was one thing I said that did make a connection, I would be happy. If not, different people have different situations. My talk was just addressing the most common ones that I've seen. If you especially have a situation that you feel is not common or has not been addressed, then yeah, reach out to me and we'll address it. Okay. All right. Let's wrap up there. Thank you guys for attending. Thank you for your attention and for your participation. I will see you guys in the next one. So.
Thank you.
Okay. Here.
Thank you.
Thank you.